Tapan, my student, and we could actually saturate this map to a greater length. But still we found that of the QTLs that we have identified, there was a wide gap for these yield QTLs, and we thought we need to actually look how we can further dense it. And we started making SNPs, genomic SNPs, and we could get almost 4,000 high quality SNPs, and they were most of them 40% is a large amount present in genic regions. Again, done in a collaborative work with Dr. Sabhyata and our group. Sabhyata Bhatia is the staff scientist from National Institute of Plant Genomic Research in Delhi itself. And we started constructing, and we could get a very dense map. It is one of the most densest map. Not only that, we could identify the QTLs, but we didn't stop here. What we said is the utility of these QTLs will only occur when we start using, first we validate them. Most of the map or biotechnological work stops, in case of QTLs, is just by identifying and publishing. But me and my partner thought that we need to validate these QTLs and start using in the breeding program. And what we started looking is, can we actually really use? Because what we were doing is we were identifying QTLs per seed size, and there was a lot amount of criticism, particularly in the committees, where they say, why do you want to do for seed size? It has very high heritability. The heritability is as high as 80%. But what me and Dr. Sabhyata always argued is, we are not looking at post-harvest seed size. We are able to, if this marker information is there, we'll be able to select them at the seedling stage and cull out. And this is how we hit upon, can we actually use it in the breeding program? And when Tapan was with me as my doctoral student, we started using one of the line that was supplied by ICARDA, GOXI. This is a highly drought tolerant line. It is actually released as a variety in Ethiopia. And we had one very bold line, Fuleji 0515, which was developed by the Maharashtra University. And we wanted to actually include the bold seed size along with the drought tolerance characters. And we could get a large amount of variations. But at the same time, what we started doing is, we started looking for the QTLs in the seedling stage itself. And for those plants which had the maximum number of these QTLs, we started intercrossing them. And what happened exactly, this was a collaborative work. Again, the intercrossings were taken up along with my friend at PAU Ludhiana, Dr. Sarvajit, and now Dr. Shaila has joined from there. And you can see, now we have, when we are speaking of small seed, and speaking of seed whose 100 seed weight is 50 grams, which is actually designated as extra large or extra bold seeded Kabuli types in the AACRP systems. And we have medium bold, which I'm calling, which is 56 grams, and extra bold. And this year, along with Dr. Chauhan, who's the technical officer here, we have started taking the evaluation of these lines. At the same time, one of my students, Rinki and Shubha, they were actually fingerprinting all these land races that have been obtained from this Vana region. And while we have been fingerprinting, we could understand, because we had some prior genetic information and marker related information that were linked tightly to these gene-based markers. We could identify, for example, Ascochyta blight linked QTLs, which were amplified. Similarly, MIP transcription factor, which were FAC analogs. Similarly, dehydrin gene analogs, because we have used the gene-based markers. Then we started looking, if these are there, why don't we start looking at developing a mass-based program? And when you start looking at development of mass-based program, this is basically, I'm speaking of pulses. It was only in marker development along in the Center of Excellence in Genomics, ICRISAT, was doing a lot of work, and also NIPGR. And it was only in 2000s and 2010s where a large amount of marker development was going. And from 2010 to 14, I can say identification of QTLs in a tightly linked fashion. There were few that were identified even before, but there was a large distance between the QTL identified as well as gene of interest or trait of interest. The validation which has occurred, this was the time where roughly around 2007 or 8, when I had joined into the chickpea program at Indian Agricultural Research Institute, from initially working at Indian Institute of Soybean Research, Indore. So I thought we start now using this available technology into marker assisted selection. Thanks to CIMMYT, we were given a generation challenge program, which was basically for utilizing the already identified markers in forward breeding. And my colleague, Teresa Milan from Coroba University, has actually identified on linkage group 2 in case of chickpea a hotspot. I call this hotspot because it harbors almost 4 genes for the Fusarium wilt and 2 for Ascochyta blight rabe, Ascochyta rabe. So we started actually validating these markers as well as developing our own markers using the NPTC program along with Dr. Soren, who is also a co-author on this at IIPR Kanpur. And we could actually identify a set of SSR markers which were tightly linked to different genes, actually published by different group of workers. We had validated, we could get about 20 markers tightly linked, and we started using this. Now, at the phenotypic level, we have a very good wilt-seq plot. That's right. And most of our breeders say, Dr. Saab, there is no need for developing molecular markers because I have a wilt-seq plot which works very well. These wilt-seq plots are race specific or race predominant. For example, we have a very good wilt-seq plot in IRI, which is mostly for FOC3 and FOC4 based, mostly FOC4 based. Now, what I was telling to my friends and colleagues in the breeding system is, sitting at Delhi, what I was basically trying to do is develop lines and varieties that need to go into AACRP system, which can work very well good at the central India and South India where the majority area is there, or I need to pyramid, and which this thing does not permit. Though this here you see, you could actually see lines which are highly tolerant or in a segregant population where you can see most of them died. But we have certain lines. But within these lines, I could identify even in advanced stages which were having pyramided for most of the FOG genes, 2, 3, 4, 5. That is for South India, for Central India, and for the Northwest plain zones. As I said, initial work by my student Shubha et al., as well as Rinki, could identify certain of the QTLs for Ascochyta blight and QTLs for wilt, and our Indo-Canadian Pulse Genomics initiative as well as NPTC program could identify the yield QTLs under drought. We thought, can we mobilize them from the wild species? We started using 372 as well as some other lines and Echinocospermum based crosses. And one of my students has already published this, how we are able to broaden the base. Now what we started looking is, we started looking if we can use only the QTLs which were tightly linked to our FOG genes, TR19 and TR110, and only introgress this particular region into our recipient parent, let's say Pusa 372. We have used a large amount of mega varieties, and we could get lines which were having only this particular introgress segment, as well as we could also check out this green line indicates what is called as the yield QTLs. And as we go ahead, I'll show you the purple, which indicates the drought QTLs. And we could develop lines. See, when we started screening under this drought stress, I'll be showing you a time lag photo. For example, when we have sown, almost all the things survived. Early wilt sets in about 20 days around after sowing, 20 to 28 days, depending on the climatic conditions when we sow down in the October ending in the North Indian conditions. As you look into this time lag photo, you will see that from this initial lines, those which were initially susceptible to early wilt, these all have actually perished, leaving some of the lines. This is an early wilt check BGD 1005 and WR315. And as we progress and as late wilt starts setting in, almost all the lines started perishing. They were killed by the pathogen, except for this land race from Latvia, ILC 0. And as the line towards maturity goes, we could see that only this particular line, you see in the backdrop almost all the lines in this field. This is Dr. Neil Turner. So all the lines in the field have actually perished except for this line. This is under a collaborative program with ICARDA, which is now hosted in Lebanon, which we are looking. This has stay green. Now what we started doing is using this line in our program, as well as using some of our elite lines. We started developing a large amount of breeding lines, and we have started using markers in a foreground selection. We also now started one more program along with Dr. Praveen Verma in NIPGR, where we have started specifically targeting 2 or 3 mega varieties to actually pyramid both for wilt and Ascochyta blight, and also with ICRISAT in our NPTC program. So when we look, we started even validating what you call as a large amount of markers. And we have a huge amount of marker assisted backcross lines. The check completely died. The one of the what you call as parent, which is not so good, and you have highly tolerant families as well as lines. You look the parent versus these lines, which are now totally resistant. This is the power of marker assisted breeding. And we didn't stop there. We wanted to actually use them for farmers. And under the chairmanship of Dr. NP Singh and Dr. Dikshit, an all India coordinated special trial for wilt resistant introgression lines was started 2 years back. And we've entered our lines, and other breeders have also entered from various centers. And you can look, this has now completed 2 years of testing. This year it was into its 2 years of second year of testing, BGM 20211 and BGM 20212, which has almost, if this is the recurrent parent PUSA 391, which we have used, we have about 20 to 30% higher yield and showing resistance across 8 wilt specific plots across the country, across the zones, indicating that these are pyramided for the wilt or the fork alleles. So we generally almost have a large set of 61 pyramided MABC lines for the foreground selection. We have validated what we call as 5 markers, including one by Dr. Mahendra Tudi, which is a SNP marker, which we have validated, but we'll be validating for the second year this time. Initially, people take about 4 or 5 markers for background selection, but we have almost used 10. So 98 background markers apart from these 5. We have a large number of marker-assisted derived backcross bred lines, which have been evaluated for common trials, of which 2 are in AVT1 and 2 are in AVT2. So the second one, so if this is one example where marker assisted or genomic assisted breeding can help, for example, breeding for resilience to biotic stresses. We have another program which we are doing along with Dr. Aditya Pratap and Sarvajit of IIPR Kanpur and PAU for Ascochyta blight pyramiding and wilt pyramiding. But one more trait, the abiotic stress resilience. My lab is working both on the drought as well as salinity. We have just initiated the programs on heat. And when you look at these, when you look into particularly the chickpea production, thanks Rajiv for this slide. This is an old slide, never though. You see that the largest yield robber is drought. And of course, afterwards is the pod borer. Pod borer, you have very good management strategies, though the resistance is not available, and only the transgenic approach, which Dr. Sharma and his group at ICRISAT, Dr. Bidyut Sharma from Assam and the group are actually working on it. along with IIPR, Indian Institute of Pulse Research. But we were actually looking at drought, and do we have any means? Now, when you start looking at drought, just like yield, you have a concept. The concept says that the tolerance, not resistance, is governed by several factors and several pathways. It's complex, just like the yield. Now, there can be phenotypic characters, leaf rolling, or higher silica content, better physiological, for example, relative water content, membrane stability index, or biochemical characters, or as such root mass index, threshold of leaf expansion, rate of transpiration. So there are large number of characters, and different genes or QTLs govern these characters. They need to be pyramided into suitable background. This was very much understood. Conventional breeding approaches are time consuming. And the problem with the pulses in general, chickpea in particular, is whenever some land comes into irrigation, the farmer starts taking up the staple food crops like the rice, wheat, and maize. It's but natural. These feed his stomach, and then chickpea is always thrown into its what we call as marginal and submarginal lands. And therefore, the SAT, the semi-arid tropics, host a large amount of these pulses apart from millets. So we need to immediately build upon tolerance to drought as well as heat and salinity. And we need to actually identify and develop lines to have the yield resilience with these particular characters. While my student, Dr. Santosh, who is now in CACR Nagpur, was working for his doctoral thesis, we have seen that there were great differences in the performance of Desi and Kabuli types under non-stressed and stressed environments. And particularly when we were looking, we have seen that drought particularly affects pods. Pods invariably affect the seeds, right? So it was very important that we understand that what happens and which place this becomes critical. We have seen that it may happen because lesser number of pods. That means the drought initiated at the flowering stage, leading to a large number of flower drop. Number two, at the pod initiation stage, therefore lesser number of filled grains or filled seeds per pod, therefore reduction in the number of filled pods, so having more puffs. So we started looking and thought that we need to actually target this particular trait, and we need to actually delineate this trait in terms of different characters. So we started looking at characters and Dicrisite and group, particularly with Dr. Rajiv Krishnamurthy Vades, were identifying the root traits, and Dr. P.K. Jain and my group also here in the national project on transgenic crops, particularly related to functional genomics component, we are looking at above ground traits. So why this particular thing was necessitated? This particular thing was necessitated because you need to understand the ontology of drought in South Indian conditions to the North Indian conditions, or down of equator, because chickpea is grown in Africa, and down of equator to the north of equator. Now, when you look into down of equator, around January, when the summer solstice starts, what happens is the drought is gradual. That is, water stress is gradual after January 14th or so, and then it slowly starts increasing, and therefore there is a good amount of time for root to respond to this increasing moisture stress. It's totally different. So when you start looking at North Indian conditions or to the north of equator, wherever in the world it is, what happens is you see there is almost a beautiful conducive stage for chickpea growth or for the pulses growth, which are the winter season pulses or the post-rainy pulses. And you see that they grow normally. The season is very good till February, March ending. And suddenly from April, the temperature shoot, and the shooting is by 10 to 12 degrees. Somewhere from 30 degrees, suddenly the temperature shoots to 38 degrees. And this does not allow the root as such per se to actually respond to this increasing drought. root biomass generally and root length play a role. I don't deny the fact, but that we need to have above ground factors. And that's where we started looking at what are the above ground traits. And after almost trying about 15 traits along with my colleague earlier, Dr. Deshmukh, who is now in US and the ex-head, and with current my chickpea partner, Dr. Madan Pal, we saw that it was relative water content, membrane stability index, apart from the root traits that play a role. So we started looking at identifying QTLs, because already Dr. Rajiv Varshney's group was working very well on these root QTLs. We started looking if we can start looking at this above ground traits. And what we started using is a rapid phenotyping technique, which was developed in lentil by my colleague Dharmender Singh, which was published in Plant Breeding, a hydroponics technique. Some may argue against it, but I found it very useful for rapidly delineating. So initial screening can easily be done, and that's what we have done. And we could identify a good amount of polymorphic variation for these two traits, both for relative content and membrane stability index. And along with Dr. P.K. Jain, we started looking if we can actually develop a map for this particular thing. And we could identify using SSR markers a large amount of QTLs, both for membrane stability index as well as for relative water content. And we could find robust QTLs which had an additive effect, explaining almost 18 to 20% variation, particularly for membrane stability index. And we have done this almost over 3 years over normal environment as well as rain-fed environment, using both the rainout shelter facilities that very kindly Dr. N.P. Singh, Director IIPR, could actually provide for this program. And what we were looking is, when we identified QTLs, we said, is there any other specific difference? Can we actually look into it? And we have seen that in case of legumes, unlike cereals, when you look into cereals, what happens? Basically, the vegetative phase is totally stopped and the reproductive phase comes, though it is initiated or differentiated at the CRI stage or the crown root initiation stage. That's not so in case of legumes. What happens in legumes? The reproductive parts are axial, and therefore, even my teacher, Dr. Sonakia from JNKVV Jabalpur, used to say, and as well as Deshmukh, that we need to look into not just harvest index, but plant biomass per se. And when Dr. Deshmukh was here in his emeritus, we have done this experiment later, the legacy being continued by Madan Pal, where we have seen that those cultivars which were having higher biomass in the initial stages before flowering were the lines that were more drought tolerant, but also these were inherently also carrying greater membrane stability index and relative water content, be it PUSA 72, PUSA 362, and PUSA 1103. Friends, let me tell you, these three are just not from IRI studies. It was done under the first Australia-India Strategic Research Fund program, wherein we have used 15 locations in India and South Asia, as well as about 10 locations in Australia. And PUSA 362 is one of the line that ranked the highest. And we started looking if we can actually identify some genes which were actually playing a major role.